Good morning. Welcome to our Minnehaha County Commission meeting for February 18th, 2025. Call the meeting to order and recognize that we have a full member of commissioners present. Just before we get started, silence your cell phones and please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Look for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda contains some of our routine type business. Bills to be paid, personnel actions, reports, etc., all of which is available in the auditor's office. If anybody would like to see anything on the consent agenda, is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on the consent agenda? Commission, anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Motion is second. Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on now to our regular business. If anybody's going to speak to any agenda item or at the end for public comment, please sign in the back. We do need your name for the public record. First agenda item is public hearing and second reading and adoption of the 2045 Envision Comprehensive Plan. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Scott Anderson, Planning Director, and I'm happy to bring this to you today. It has been approximately a year and a half long process, and this is the second reading and possible final adoption. Just to give you an overview and the public of what a comprehensive plan is, it serves as a blueprint for the county on how we will handle growth and development. It establishes policies for land use, and then after that, once you have a comprehensive plan adopted, that allows you to enact zoning ordinances, and that's what we have done in the past. This is a revision and a new comprehensive plan that will be replacing the existing Envision 2035 plan. This anticipates looking at growth for the next 10 to 20 years. After about 10 years, you start looking at when you will be updating and reviewing and making revisions to your comprehensive plan. This has so we will help inform the public. This has been an ongoing process that has been before the Planning Commission several times. The Planning Commission created a density task force subcommittee which reviewed specific policies and ideas and looked at how the comprehensive plan could better reflect the trends and needs of the community, and they met 3 times. Upon their conclusion, they presented some ideas and suggestions to the Planning Commission, which were then incorporated into the comprehensive plan. Once the comprehensive plan was done, we held 3 public open houses throughout the community. We held one in Del Rapids, we held one in Brandon, and we held one in Hartford. We took the show on the road and invited the public. I feel we had really good turnout with about 15 to 20 at the first 2 meetings and probably 60 or so at the last meeting, which I felt was very good. We had a lot of really interesting and in-depth dialogue with the community. It was not just a presentation. We were there to answer questions and dialogue and work with the community. So with all that, I have a short presentation that I'll go over, a little PowerPoint presentation. I have provided the entire comprehensive plan to you in the PDF form, as well as given you the link to the website, which the comprehensive plan is found on. The comprehensive plan has been available for public comment. So Trish, if you could do the PowerPoint presentation, I will show you. So we had an online site for people to look at the plan and make comments. And we did get, I feel like, very good turnout. We had like 60 to 70 comments that were made out of on that site. So if you would go to the PowerPoint presentation. So, yeah, thank you. So some of the questions that we asked were, how do you feel about allowing more residential development in the county, in the rural area? These are some of the responses that we got. That came up, like land and new and housing. You can see that the range was either neutral or more positive into the positive area. The next slide shows how do you feel about accessory dwelling units? You can see that the majority of the people were very supportive. This is something that is an ongoing trend in the United States, and you may recall that we had a couple months ago representatives from the AARP that presented also information to you on the importance and the need for accessory dwelling units and how we are handling that, and the options and the benefit that poses and provides to the community. Through regulations, we feel it can be something that is beneficial, so we will be looking at incorporating that in the future. The next slide is, well, that was primarily it. The staff report that is provided with you gives the details of how we went through the process. I feel it's a very good plan. It has been provided and worked through by staff and the Planning Commission and a density task force. We've incorporated suggestions from the community, and the plan that is in front of you incorporates all of that information and work. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. This is a public hearing, and I'll stand by for any questions that you have and if there's any questions from the public.
All right. As Scott has indicated, this is a public hearing, so the order we go is we take proponent testimony. Is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of adopting this plan? Okay. Moving on then, anybody opposed to adopting the 2045 Envision Comprehensive Plan? All right, I will turn it over to the commission for questions and/or actions. Commissioner Kipley?
I can lead us off with some comments. This has been a great exercise, kind of selfishly for me. Learned a lot about the county and serving on the Planning Commission. This has been a great exercise for us, I think, as we talk about some unique areas that we have, the unique geography we have in the state. I think we talk about some other areas of the state that are not growing as fast or in decline, some small towns in decline. I think we've got some of the blessings and curses with growth, and so having a plan for that growth is necessary. I think we did this probably about 10 years ago, and now that's how fast things can change on us, and some new approaches to density management can change. But I just kind of point to just north of town, Foundation Park, and some of the things to the northwest of town, new Jefferson High School. Just so many things in the past 10 years have not made our old plan moot, but it needed updating. So I appreciate the 1.5 year long effort that went into this. I'd also appreciate that we insourced this. We could have paid a consultant to do this and spent quite a bit of money on it, but our staff is pretty sophisticated and knows our territory better than any consultant does. So I think they did an outstanding job. Did as best we could with public engagement. I think a few of my colleagues went to some of the sessions. I went to the open house in Brandon. I think Commissioner Bleinberg, you went to the one in Hartford, right?
Yeah.
So I think there was decent turnout. There was, I think these, like anything, until this gets applied to the conditional use permit that's in your backyard, you don't really care about the comprehensive plan. And then all of a sudden, if it's for you or against you, it matters. But this is a guiding document that we use at the Planning Commission level, so having some foundational principles built into it about what growth looks like. Also, I think we'll see, maybe Scott, maybe I can form this into a question so Scott can give us what some next steps are, because there will be, this adopts the comprehensive plan, but it doesn't change anything in ordinance today. And maybe we have at least a couple ideas related to accessory dwelling units or some other density zoning matters, some tweaks related to building eligibilities. But maybe, Scott, you could give us a preview of what's coming down the pike and the timeline for ordinance changes that would pivot out of this process.
That's exactly correct. As I indicated, this is a blueprint for how we interpret and work with growth. The actual meats and bones are of how we implement those changes are through the zoning ordinance. And we're not sitting on our hands. We already, on next Monday at our Planning Commission meeting, we're giving a briefing to the joint City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County on some proposed changes that we'd like to make based on the adoption of the comprehensive plan that deal with transfer of building eligibilities and ADUs. So now we'll start the process of educating the Planning Commission. We've prepared some ordinance amendments. We'll discuss that. We'll get their input on it. We'll see if there needs to be anything changed, and then we'll ask for them to authorize us to publish a hearing date for changes that would be heard in front of the Planning Commission. And once those changes are adopted, then we'll bring them back for, I'll bring them to the County Commission and City Council for approval for those various ordinances that we have. So we're working already on starting to implement those recommended changes that are being made in this comprehensive plan.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just follow that up with, again, a big thank you to Scott and his staff. I had an interesting conversation with Scott the other day where this is a 20-year look ahead, and Scott just celebrated his 20-year anniversary with the county. So we've got 20 years of history and 20 years of the future. And I just think that's an incredible way to look at things across a time horizon that takes into account future generations and what the greater Sioux Falls area is going to look like 40 years from now. And this plan contemplates the next 20 years, but lots of growth and lots of issues to manage. And we need some general principles, some objective guidelines to follow when we're sitting as a planning commission and listening to a conditional use permit that's got arguments on both sides of it. How do we balance those interests? And having a guiding document like this helps us out a lot. So I will definitely be supportive of this effort.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any additional comments?
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Weinberg?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to also thank the planning staff for the excellent work and the time that they've invested, the Planning Commission, and also the public that came out and spent time going over the plan that we've created and giving valuable input online and in person. I know I've had conversations with citizens in the county, and I also appreciated your comments, Scott, about working with the city. That was going to be one of my questions, was how we would move forward with joint jurisdiction areas with our municipalities. So that's my comment. Just a big thank you to everyone involved.
Sounds good. Commissioner Heisey?
Mr. Chair, let's make one brief comment. Even as a new commissioner, I've been able to follow this in part and see the development of this plan. I attended the public meeting in Hartford last year, and like Scott mentioned, it was very well attended, and there was a lot of good conversations that came from that. And when running for office last year, I did get a chance to read the last comprehensive plan that was released back in 2015. Naturally, I also read through this one and have spoken to Scott on a couple occasions about some of the finer points in the document, and I've been fairly impressed, and I think there's a fair amount of continuity from one document to the next, but also sober and pragmatic future projections with a good level of data to back it up. I think it's well written, and it's a good map for future development, and it's sensitive and very cognizant of many various interests and in the community. And I'll be voting to approve the comprehensive plan.
All right. Additional comments? So the only thing I have to say is a thank you to the planning office, planning commission, and everybody, the volunteers that serve on that board. They do a lot of the heavy lifting that before it even comes to our level, and a lot of stuff doesn't come to our level because they do a good job of taking care of it. So appreciation there. And as Commissioner Kipley said, this deals with the growth, and I'd rather manage growth than deal with the pain of contraction. So I think we're in a good place. We're in a very good place, and a lot of public input, and it's a plan. Plans are adopted and adapted as time goes on. So no further comments. I will call the roll.
Kipley.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to our Planning and Parks Department annual presentation.
Thank you. Scott Anderson, Planning Director, and I have prepared a short PowerPoint presentation for you and also a briefing memo, which gives you lots of data, statistics, and facts. I guess probably of most important to note is if you look at the memo that was prepared, you will notice that we have in the past year seen some decline in building activity, and we not so much the number of building permits, but it's really reflected in the number of new single-family residences that we have seen. In 2024, we processed or we approved building permits for 43 new residences, and that was a significant drop, a number that compared to the number of residences we observed in 2023, which was 69. And in my memo, I think you can attribute that probably to increased interest rates, the economic feeling of where we are as a society. So that is one thing I think that we needed to note. It's not that we did not stop building or having activity, just fewer homes were being built. A lot of that, I can see that it is going to pick up again because that is evident by the number of plats that we have seen being approved. Typically, that's the first step of when we start seeing an uptick in development, when we see residential lots being created and building permits or building eligibilities being assigned to those lots. It's a likelihood that they're going to be developed on. So we have seen still good activity in the platting, and so I anticipate that it is going to pick up again and we will have continued growth. With that in mind, I will go on to the PowerPoint presentation. So my PowerPoint presentation basically looks at where we have been, where we are, where we're going. So if you would click ahead, some of the things that we've completed, I've provided you the number of building permits and septic inspections and code enforcement. We have been very busy digitizing historical minutes and documents. We've updated our permit application packets and information brochures, which we've put outside. We've created an online customer service satisfaction survey. We've reviewed new preliminary floodplain maps that are being submitted by FEMA. We've planted new trees at Wall Lake. We are basically, as of January 1st, we transferred everything off the AS 400. All of our information is now being serviced and used on that parcel manager format. And we are still in the process, we'll get to that, but there's still work being done updating and transferring some historical records onto that parcel manager. And as you know, we spent a lot of time working on our comprehensive plan. This included, as I had it just previously in the item before indicated, that we created a density task force last year. We had meetings, we wrote chapters and worked on the comprehensive plan. We had several meetings in front of the Planning Commission, several public open houses. So that's where we have been in the last year. I think it's important that we also note where we've worked with updating that parcel manager conversion, because that was a lot of work. You can just look at the numbers that are there. There were approximately 20,000 building permits that needed to be transferred over, and we're still in the process of that because there are a few, and when I say a few, there's a few hundred that there are some issues with. There's a number missing, or there's not a date, or it's not lining up with where it needs to go. So staff is still working on basically manually correcting that and make sure we get them on the right parcels, because that historical information is very important to the community. Often we get a lot of requests from real estate people, banks, surveyors, property owners, because they want to know they may not know, well, when was this the shed built, or when was this addition put exactly on my house, because I need to know for insurance or whatever. And so we need to keep those historical records. And also, we processed approximately 4,500 conditional use permits and rezonings and variances. Those are all added to that information. We worked closely with IT over the past year and converted all that, took it all off the AS400 and moved it over to Parcel Manager. As you're aware, the county is attempting to sort of move off that AS400 platform onto something that's more user-friendly and easier to manage. So if you'd go on to the next slide, as you are aware, we just adopted our comprehensive plan, and this is some general information that talks about the dates of when we held our density task force meetings. The next couple slides will go over sort of the timeline. We did some organization. We had the density task force. Then the next slide shows you that we updated it through the Planning Commission in the summer of 2024. We revised those chapters. In September and October, those meetings were dedicated to editing and revising the draft text. The next slide shows that we had the 3 public engagement and open houses in Del Rapids, and it gives you those dates in November. And then finally, that information was provided to the Planning Commission, and we held meetings, and then the Planning Commission recommended approval, and you now have had your first and second readings and final adoption, which took place today. So the next slide, this tells you what we are always doing in our office. We're always working with code enforcement and CUP inspections. We are issuing building permits and septic permits and doing septic inspections. We are writing staff reports and conducting site visits. We answer lots and lots of questions, general inquiries, and zoning, explaining zoning laws and how they operate in the county. We are adopting short-term and long-term rental and other ordinances with the city of Del Rapids. We've adopted the comprehensive plan. We are drafting ordinance amendments for ADUs and looking at how we're proposing changes to the transfer of building eligibilities to make that simpler in the county. And then, as I indicated, we're continuing to migrate that information to Parcel Manager, making sure that the permits line up with the parcel information and that we keep track of all of that historical data that we use. The next slide talks a little bit about code enforcement. It gives you the number of nuisances that we opened up. I will indicate that we did send out, it looks like a lot of nuisance complaints, but I think in my staff, in the presentation, I indicate that most of those nuisance zoning complaints were buildings that were constructed without building permits. So we work with getting those people, they may or may not have been aware that they needed a building permit for a deck or a shed or something. It's just getting people in, treating everyone equally. We make sure everyone gets a building permit and that we have a record of that activity. So the next slide shows you the breakdown of the number of permits that we've issued throughout the year, the number of rezonings and so on, variances and plats. And then I think the next slide will show you what we are planning on, where we are going. We will be reviewing ordinances, working on implementing that Envision 2045 comprehensive plan goals. We will be looking at adopting changes to we will be adopting the 2024 building code. That'll be coming up. We will start working on the new aerial mapping that will occur next year. That'll be coming before you, and we'll be looking, I'll be explaining that when we get to the budget process. We are working with FEMA on potential adoption of new floodplain maps. I know that Commissioner Karski is aware of this, so that FEMA's reached out to him as the chairman. We have meetings with them today and tomorrow on future maps that they have been working on for the past 7 or 8 years. So those are all some of the things that we will be continuing to work on. And then I think the next slide is that we continue to work with our municipalities, and we're sensitive to their needs and what they're facing, and we continue to try to be very good partners with them and work together on issues that arise in our joint areas and that we have joint jurisdictions with, but also all the communities, regardless of whether we have joint jurisdiction or not. We always try to be good partners, good planning partners, and work with them. So that is the conclusion of my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have, and stand by for any questions.
All right, we take public comment on all our agenda items. Anybody from the public like to comment on this presentation? Commissioners, questions for Scott? Comments? I do have one, Scott, if nobody else does. Commissioner Weinberg?
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question, Scott, about, you mentioned the customer satisfaction survey that you started
Yeah.
online. Do you get a lot of responses on that?
Last year we got 2.
Okay. Are they generally people who are not happy with you?
They were not happy. That involved, it was, both of the comments dealt with Mueller Pallet, and they felt it was unfair,
Okay.
so.
Well, thanks for putting that up and making use of it.
Scott, I haven't seen the floodplain maps. Any significant changes? And these maps, I bring it up because you talk about impacting economic development and the ability to build if there are significant changes. Have you had a chance to look at them? Are they available for
Yes.
the public? Okay.
They have been made. There's been a preliminary set of these maps that have been available for several years, and the city of Sioux Falls is actively using those already. The maps that will be approved, and we have them available. They're online, and you can pull them up. And yes, there are going to be significant changes. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this. There are going to be major changes, and the amount of floodplain that is being studied and identified has increased. So there will be impacts to property owners. And that is one of those programs that, one of the issues that we deal with floodplain is we don't have a lot of control over it. It's not that we can alter it or change it, and it is close. It's, I would say, closely monitored by the federal government. They want to make sure that we are not allowing development to occur without the necessary steps being taken. That might be elevating properties, it may be flood-proofing them, but they closely monitor that. I would say that we have a lot of floodplain in the county, given the geography of our county with the Big Sioux River that flows through. There's a pretty wide swath of floodplain, and then we have a lot of tributaries that sort of happen to meet right here in our county, if you think about it. Down by Brandon, we have basically, Split Rock Creek and Beaver Creek and other creeks that all sort of meet there. So there is a lot of floodplain in the county, and that's all being reevaluated. There'll be some changes.
Work in progress.
It will be, and so we are educating ourselves. This is an ongoing education process that I work with myself and staff and other departments in the county that are affected, and so we learn about what the new guidelines are going to be, and we'll be learning more about the timeline that they're following. They have specific requirements that they're going to have to follow.
I know at one time the city wasn't permitting anything within 6 inches of the base flood elevation. Anything that 6 inches is not a big deal, but it really does have a great impact to what properties can be built on.
Yeah.
Do we stick with what the FEMA does, or do we have an additional requirement?
No, the city currently has a 2-foot requirement, a 2-foot freeboard they call it, that you have to have at least 2 feet above the floodplain before you're allowed to build anything. That's because they anticipate that over time it's going to increase as development occurs upstream. It puts more water into that floodplain, and it'll increase. We only require the property owners to be at or above the floodplain.
Okay.
So there is no freeboard required in the county ordinance. And part of that's because we have not a lot, but we also have to deal with large agricultural buildings that may be in the floodplain, and those are easier to do flood proofing than a residential building in the city. So there are methods that you can accomplish that with.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Approve an amended resolution establishing the record of 2025 Minnehaha County designated polling places. Auditor Anderson, good morning.
Good morning. Leah Anderson, Minnehaha County Auditor. In accordance so I have a amended resolution for the record of 2025 Minnehaha County designated polling places, which also includes merging 2 precincts together. In accordance with South Dakota Codified Law 1214.1 and 1212.1, the Auditor's Office is requesting approval of an amended 2025 polling place resolution. On January 7th of 25, you approved the resolution 25-04, which established the record of 2025 designated polling places. One of the locations that was used during the 2022 and 2024 elections is unable to commit to being available for city and school elections, which would create confusion for the voters in the precincts assigned to that location. Since we have no county or city elections planned for 2025, and in consultation with our Deputy State's Attorney, I felt it would be best to bring forth this amended resolution to put forth the changes that we need to make in the GIS system and in the precincts that are assigned to that location. Let's see here. The precincts that were assigned to the polling place that we are no longer going to use are 3-1 and 5-10. Precinct 3-1 would now be assigned to Asbury United Methodist Church. Precinct 510 would be merged with 5-9. They have exact identical splits, meaning they're the same ward, district for legislative. Their school district is the same, et cetera, water district. So they would be assigned to Our Savior's Lutheran, which is already where precinct 5-9 is assigned. I have communicated with Jeremy Washington. He's the city clerk. And he is in agreement with these changes. He also experienced difficulties with the precinct or the polling location that we are going to no longer use. So I'll scroll through here and kind of show you what we're talking about. That's the resolution. So this is snip of our larger map. So 3-1 is where my cursor is right now, and 5-10 is this one. So those two locations were voting at a church that was located within precinct 510. That's the one that is no longer available or isn't a good source to use as a polling location. So what I've done is for 3-1, if I go down here, this is 3-1. So they were driving quite a bit towards the east direction. They will currently vote at, or they will be voting, if you approve this, at Asbury United Methodist, which is right here where my cursor is. This precinct that's gray is 519. There's no changes there, but they currently vote at St. Mark's, which is right up here. So this precinct would go to Asbury. I will say, because you may have a question about this, normally we want our polling place to be as close to the precinct or within the precinct as possible. It's not always possible to find a polling location in that exact precinct. And this is one of those cases where in 3-1, there is not an ideal place to use as a polling location. So Asbury they used to be a polling location, and they are excited to have us return to them. And so 3-1 makes sense to vote at Asbury because it's a lot closer. If I go down here to 5-9, so 5-9, there's no changes in that precinct. They vote at Our Savior's, which is located right here. 5-10 would be the one that would be changed, and they would be merged into 5-9, and they would vote at the same location as 5-9. So 5-10 and 5-9 would then end up being 5-9. Any questions?
Okay, take public comment on this agenda item first. Commissioner Weinberg?
Thank you. I think you mentioned in your memo that 5-9 and 5-10 would have the same ballot. Is that correct? Or would there be increased confusion for voters or for staff or volunteers?
They already have the same ballot. So everything, when we talk about splits, that's anything that could create a uniqueness in their ballots. They both have exactly the same splits.
Okay, thank you.
What's the, if I may, the guideline for precincts? Is it population-based? Is it just geography? How do we decide, how many we need?
Well, we like to keep the numbers, technically in codified law, we do not want someone that would have to stand in line or wait to vote more than 30 minutes. So that's a good guideline. It's hard to judge that when elections are different sizes. So, for instance, in the last general election for presidential election, there could have been people that may have had to stand in line for 30 minutes. Perhaps I didn't get any reports of that, but it could have happened. Whereas other elections, they may walk right up and vote. So I like to keep the numbers. My goal, I guess, is to try to have numbers that are kind of in that mid-range of less than 2,000. Some that we have are higher than that because we don't have options for them. But we do like to keep those numbers a little bit on the lower side. We have some that are under 1,000. We have some that are over 2,000. But this would be kind of a mid-range combination. So in 5-9, we have 826. In 5-10, we have 955. And this would put them at 1,781 for active voters. When I say active, they're registered active voters. It doesn't mean they're all voting. So our turnout is usually about 70%, 60 to 70 on the high side. This would change our precinct, the numbers of our precincts from 81 to 80, but it would keep the number of locations consistent. They would be the same.
Is each precinct managed the same way when it comes to voting as far as individuals that are the election support staff? Do you have the same number of people at each one, or can you manage that time by saying we have more processing capability?
So we can, that can vary. The number of precinct board can vary. It would have to be at least 3 people. Usually in some of the larger ones, we have 5 people. So it goes in, the way it is worded in codified laws, you would have a precinct superintendent, and then you have pairs of 2 after that. So you would either have 3 or 5. We do have the ability to also add a precinct assistant. So they're not technically on the board, or they're not deputies or superintendents, but they're an assistant. So if we have a different number.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Ising.
Hey, good morning, Leah. One quick question. Assuming that the commission passes this change, how are voters going to be notified? Are they going to be notified this year or next year?
Great question. So we've been debating that if they get notified of the change. Sometimes when we notify or send out too many reminders too early ahead of an election, they forget or don't pay attention to it. So ideally, we will notify Precinct 3-1 and Precinct 5-10 when we make this change. And then we would notify them again next year prior to an election.
And then one follow-up question, just to clarify, you're not just combining polling locations, but also combining 2 precincts, specifically 510 and 59. Are they going to become one precinct then?
Yes, those 2 will become one, and we'll retain 59 as the number, because then we'd send out fewer notifications. So 59 is already assigned to Our Savior's Lutheran Church. 510 will become part of 59, and they will get notified that their precinct number has changed and their location has changed.
Thank you.
Yep.
For a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion a second. Call the roll, please.
Kipley.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to our Treasurer's Office Annual Report. Treasurer Swanson, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Swanson, Minnehaha County Treasurer. Okay, I gotta take a deep breath. It's been busy. Thank you. I want to first thank you for your support over this last year. It's just a very busy time right down in our office, and I'll outline that for you a little bit right here. So we have a new assistant treasurer, as our last assistant treasurer retired back in November. So our retired assistant treasurer is now training our new assistant treasurer for that role. She's going to be on a part-time basis. We're thinking anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And then she will slowly fade out of the picture once our new assistant treasurer is trained. We have reorganized a position within our office. We previously had 2 accountants, but we took one of those accounting positions and developed that into an accounting assistant position. We had internal interviews and hired someone within the office who really carries a strong accounting background. And that being said, our accountant that we have now is now out on medical leave and has been out since November. So we concentrate on cross-training our staff, and it's been difficult because we've had 2 back people gone for an extended length of time right now. And so I think everybody's starting to feel that, we've got to have something happen here pretty soon because we're getting tired. But it's been good. We will continue to cross-train once we get our full staff up and going again, and it's worked out really well for us. We do now have an opening for a tax license technician, and we held that off just because of our new 605 drive, which I'll get into here in a little bit, but we held off just a little bit because we just thought it was kind of futile to hire another tax license technician when we were just learning a new program ourselves. So we do have the notice out now for our new tax and license technician, and I was actually just notified this morning that we've got a gal who gave her notice today because they are being transferred to Rapid City, and it's like, oh, you can't go. So anyway, we're sad to see her go, but we will have now 2 openings for a tax license technician. So the 605 drive. what to say about that. So we started that yesterday. We were closed on, well, we weren't actually closed on Friday, last Friday, but, well, let me back up even a little bit more. So last Thursday, we had gotten notice the Tuesday before that we had to have all reports into the state by closing time on Thursday night. Well, that being said, we had to do end of month and end of day closing, so we shut down everything at 1 o'clock. We did give a press release on that Wednesday before, but it still was, a surprise to people that came in wanting to do business. We weren't able to do it because we were closed down. Then Friday, South Dakota Cars, that was the end of South Dakota Cars forever. And so we couldn't do nothing. We could do nothing with South Dakota Motor V. We could not take registrations. We couldn't do titles, anything. But we were able to do property taxes and elderly tax freeze, which we did have a fair amount of people come in for that. Oh, and plats. So we did those too. I thought, a significant amount of advertising for this starting back in January. And I think it worked pretty well, but we still had those that were like, I didn't know about this, and I don't know what else I could have done to advertise, because I tried to do all. I mean, we had a TV, we had website, signs out in front, but it is what it is. We got through it. We're doing all right there. I can tell you that there has been a lot of anxiety around this project because the way we were taught. I'm not demeaning anybody, but it's frustrating. We started going, I think it was last October, we went to STE, Southeast Tech, and we had 2 hours of just they introduced it to us. And then come December, we started getting modules that we had to read. And you had to finish modules in a certain amount of time. And then after the modules were done, they opened up a sandbox. And so then we were able to play in the sandbox, I guess they call it. And it was frustrating because there were a lot of hiccups yet in it. And so trying to get answers to a certain amount of like, why can't we get through here? Why can't we do this? You'd have to put a ticket in and you'd have to wait for an answer. Well, you could get a couple days later before you got an answer. So there's just been a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety. We started yesterday. I think things are going okay as far as I can tell. I guess if you don't laugh, you're going to cry about it, but it's going to be good. I mean, and it had to be done because our old system was basically 20 years old. So it was time. So we will see. I can let you guys know here in another month or so where we're at with that. And I foresee it to be a good thing, really. Even though I'm complaining about it right now, it's going to be a good change for us. I can see that right now. Okay, moving on. We still have our 3 part-time employees who work over the lunch hours to help our line move faster, and that's been great. We still have 2 windows that open at 7:30 in the morning. That's been fantastic. We like that. The treasurer's office has gained 5 new virtual PMBs within this last year, with the 7th that we currently have. We currently have 2 employees that are responsible for processing PMBs in the back office. Last year, 23, we had 13,700 PMBs just alone, and I got that information through the state. With the 5 new virtual PMB addresses, we now have 16,176, which is a 16% increase in a year's time. That has put a lot of pressure on the back office and those people that are doing PMBs. And the reason that is a problem is because a lot of times when you get this information, especially with the virtual PMBs right now, that paperwork is not complete. Our staff has to do that. So then we have to call these people to get the information, which half the time you can't get a hold of them. And then when you try to do a payment, a lot of times payments are declined. Well, then they have to get back to you. If they don't get back to you in such and such a time, we have to start the process all back over because now we're into they waited too long and we have to process late fees. So it just keeps rolling. We're getting bigger and bigger in that. And it's something that I'm concerned about. I know that they're covering some of this up in legislature right now, and we'll just have to see where it goes. Titles and registration, and you guys got some numbers for the titles and registration. Overall, our titles took a 9.43% decrease from 23 to 24. Dealership titles have been steady, but the private sales have slowed down. Our registrations went down by 0.88% from 23 to 24. We have noticed, though, that more people are mailing in their registrations and titles in to be processed rather than standing in line. Our county receives a majority of the funds from these registrations. I think we see a decline in these titles. I think it's been economy driven the last few years. And so I think we're going to start seeing an increase here again shortly. So you'll get that information again next year, but I'm looking for an increase. Our mailing fees. We started charging that $25 mailing fee back in 2021. There actually was a 13% decrease over the last year, but from 22 to 23, there was a 32% increase due to the fact that we were mailing out new plates, and we mailed out a lot of plates. And new plates are issued every 5 years, but due to COVID, they waited for 7 years. So that's where our expense went up with our mailing, is because of all the plates that had to go out. The Treasurer's Office did away with the ACH program for the property taxes where you pay monthly. This is going to be the first year without that program, so we're expecting this to help with time management and accuracy and balancing. Courtesy letters have gone out to those properties that are delinquent. We're sending out actually 57 title searches this year for our property taxes. A customer has to be delinquent 4 years before we can take a tax deed on that property. And if it's not taken, if it isn't paid in full, then we start a sale on that property. Last year, we were actually able to settle. We had like 4 properties that were going to be up for sale, and they all settled at the 9th hour after all that work. But it was good. They settled, and we didn't have to have one. So a majority of these people that will get letters will pay these off. We are currently in the thick of the elderly tax freeze apps right now. Last year, we did 1,000 applications with about 780 of them being eligible. Right now, we are at about 300. And we've got a month and a half left, so I'm looking that we're going to be probably right around the same number. And I will be going to Augustana Lutheran Church is right down the road here, over here, on the end of February, giving a presentation on the elderly tax freeze and introducing that program to them. You also see our NSF. You have that in front of you too. We've managed to do well at keeping that amount down. We're currently right around $6,000 NSF. And Katie that works on those has done very well at keeping those low. So what we do with that is we call them first, then we send out a letter, and if they don't respond within 10 days, they go to the sheriff's office. And then if they still don't respond, then we are able to actually close down their South Dakota cars or the 605 drive now until that is paid off. And then our phones, they continue to be steady. You see the number there. We're lower this year than we have in the last 2 years, and I'm hoping that means that more people are accessing the website or using our chat line with the state, but it's gone down a little bit. And then our kiosks, if you see our kiosk numbers, those were impressive to me. You were able to see the numbers from each of those available kiosks. And we have 5 of them in Sioux Falls. One's located at Get and Go on the east side, 2 Hy-Vee stores, one on 37th in Minnesota, one on 49th in Louise, and the DMV on Russell. And then we have one down in right outside our office, not too far, which is the one that does the least amount of business. And I was really curious because I wanted to know how much it costs to maintain these machines. And it's $360,000 a year. They're $18,000 per machine to maintain. These are state machines. So I know the state had been talking at one time about getting rid of the one in our administration building, but that hasn't happened yet, and I don't know if they will. But they get used, as you can see, they're used very well. So that's a good thing. We were able to add extra parking for our ADA customers this last year, so we've got a few more parking spots over there on the south side. We put new furniture in, looks a lot better, and it's a little bit more user-friendly. It's easier to get up and down in, actually. We'll continue to use Window 12 to serve our ADA customers, and that's been working out well. Okay, when we have a total of 23 full-time employees along with our 3 part-timers. And I just want you to know that I believe that I probably have the best staff in the whole world, because these guys, they have to keep on top of policy changes. They have to keep on top of this new system, and they're working with customers. And we get a lot of people that come through that office. And I just want to give kudos to my staff, because I think we've got the best staff. And I want to again thank you for your support. I'm anticipating another busy year ahead of us. We're going to need your support on the 605 drive. 2 weeks from now, it's going to look totally different. I'll be happy. So it'll be good. I think it's going to be a good transition. So with that, do you have any questions for me?
First, we'll take public comment. Any public comment on this presentation? Commission. Comments, questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chris. So how'd it go yesterday?
It went pretty
reached-
well. It actually went pretty well. What I did yesterday, is it okay if I?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
please.
so what we did was we've got 12 windows, 6 pods, and we just worked with half of our windows, and they worked together. And so if they had questions, they could help each other out. And honestly, by late afternoon, they were more comfortable going back to their own windows and starting doing it themselves. So, and today, we're putting in a lot of phone calls, or tickets, I should say, to state, because there's still a lot of hiccups that are trying to be worked out, especially with reports at the end of the day. But I think it went well. Everybody was, our customers were great too. I didn't hear anybody complain.
Yeah. You had mentioned how patient they were. And
They were great.
were you able to get the printers to start working again?
So
You
that was an
mentioned
issue with the state. So I don't know if you guys ever heard of BIT, I'm sure you have, but so BIT had yesterday off. And so when we got into the office, our printers that print out the registration stickers didn't work. So we had to call state, and we got a hold of somebody up there, and they had to call some of their staff in so we could fix it. In fact, we had one person yesterday, their computer, it was a BIT issue. He never did get on his computer yesterday because we weren't able to get it to work. It works today. So, yeah, it was just stressful, but it went well.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. Time will tell.
Commissioner Bleinberg?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris, for the presentation, and to your staff for the work that they do. And I just want to mention that I continue to hear positive things from the public about the amount of time that people wait or don't wait anymore. So excellent job managing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kipley?
Yes, thanks, Chris. I would echo those comments about just the sense in the community of a good customer service. So you do have a great team. Couple questions I have would be, one, just first off, you watching closely things going on in Pierre. It sounds like you're giving us a session educating on the elderly tax freeze, but that the parameters of that program might change.
Yes, they might change. And I honestly, Commissioner, I need to look into that even more. I have not been real good about keeping up on top of that right now, so.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you got a few things going
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
so that's
so,
understandable. And
yeah.
that's why we have a county association,
Yes.
and your fellow treasurers are, I'm sure we're all looking at it. For the most part, and maybe this will be part of Meredith's presentation, as she's always watching the legislature for us too, but it seems like a lot of the mechanics of it are just increasing the values with inflation. So
Correct.
the work in your office would largely be the same, it'd just be different,
Yep.
a higher amount for qualifications. But we'll want to watch that closely just to see if there's any curveballs they throw at us on that.
Yep.
If it's just higher amounts, I'm
Yeah.
sure your staff can handle it,
We
but
can
it
handle
will
it,
be, presumably more people will qualify, so it'll be more work.
Yep.
But so long as it's just the amounts, I think that's doable, but they might throw some other
Yeah.
factors in that keep it interesting. And then, Mr. Chair, my other question is just out of curiosity on some of your, like the title counts and registration counts, is there some natural seasonality in your work? Because I noticed like December is always a lower amount. Is
Yep.
that just the holidays, or is it just, what's the reason for that?
You are correct. So a lot of times, so we don't do registrations in April because it's our property tax month. And then we don't do registrations in December. So those, April is busy because that's our tax month, big tax month. But December, middle of November to December, we are quite slow. And that's why I was hoping they could push the 605 drive for that month, but that didn't happen. But that is seasonal, yes. It happens every year. And then we pick up again, right, in the winter, spring, and then it'll start tapering off again. And then we get down to, so it's seasonal. Yeah.
Chris,
Yes.
a 50% increase in the usage of the kiosks, that's huge.
It's huge.
What do you attribute that to?
I don't know if it's people don't want to wait in the line, or I really don't know, because that really, really surprises me. But I see, even when, I even see when we are having, I should go back to that, Commissioner, also. I think a lot of it is, if it's close to where they're at, they're going to get it done to where they're at. They don't have to drive all the way down here to do that. But it's interesting because even the kiosk that's downstairs, we won't even have a line, and I'll see somebody using that kiosk, and I don't understand that. But yeah, I don't understand the logic there, but that's fine. But I just think a lot of it is if people are going to live out in that area, if I don't have to run downtown, I'm going to go to that area right there. But I know those lines at Hy-Vee, I've heard, are long.
I've
They
seen
can
them,
get very
yeah.
long. So I don't know. It's like, well, you can stand there, you can stand with us. So, but they are being used.
And that's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I know your lines have gone down. That must be part of what you could attribute.
I think
that
so,
to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. Going back to the PMBs, you said you have 2 full-time staff. So, I mean, it's costing us $80,000 to $100,000 to staff just mailing those out. What's the cost benefit? I mean, what those 15,000, how much revenue is generated from those?
Oh, I was going to bring you that.
Sure to shoot, yeah, just kind of a,
I can get that for you. I know I have it downstairs, but I know they brought in, what was it? I can remember right around last year's, right around $76,000 for that, just for the back office, doing the PMBs. That was in 23 to 24. I don't know what this new year brought. I can check on that and get back to you.
so you think it was a kind of a break even?
No, I don't. I think we're losing money on them, honestly, because I think right now the PMB businesses are able to charge their customers $200 to do PMB work, to use a PMB, $200. And we're getting $25 for a mail-in. Now, PMBs, there was that new law that you could charge $100 for an out-of-state. Well, these people get a South Dakota license, now they're in-state, so we can't charge $100. We're charging $25, and we're losing money on our mailings because of that.
But how much tax revenue is generated from those 15,000?
So out of the 50, I can't tell you how much that is, but I know when I talked to state and I asked her about the PMBs, I said, what kind of a revenue do they bring in? And it was massive. And it was like, so yeah, they generate a lot of revenue for our state. So in that
Yeah, and
sense,
like I said, we're spending, I'm sure, $80,000 a year to staff those
We
two
are.
positions. So
because
I'm
we've
just
got
wondering-
basically 2 full-time employees that are doing work for other states. You know what I mean? Working for other,
Yeah, they're not living in the
they're
state.
not living in the state. So
Yeah.
we're basically servicing them for nothing.
So if there's a way to put that number,
Yeah.
a revenue number to those 15,000, it would be interesting.
Okay, I can figure that. I can get back to you on that.
Okay. No hurry, and,
Okay.
yeah, but
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional? Commissioner Benega?
Chris, I just have to say that in the years past, some of us who've been around a little bit got significant complaints in that department, but now I have not gotten hardly any over the last year, so I appreciate your staff and frankly, the extension of hours and all the things that you've done. The thing that is, as Commissioner Karski mentioned, is there a way for us to expand the kiosk? Because I know the state doesn't maybe want to do that, but if you look at the revenue and the counts, we should double the number of kiosks rather than worry about somebody's concern about the cost of the kiosk right now, because we would divert a significant number of transactions to,
Yep.
I guess, regionalization of what needs to be accomplished.
And Commissioner, I did bring that up to the state. I said, why can't we get some more kiosks? And she goes, well, of course, the cost is huge, but although the way it's being used, I would think would eat that cost. What I would like to see, to take the one out of the administration building and put that someplace else where the community, would ask, I would like to see more this side of town. So,
Well, if you look at the Hy-Vees and the Get and Goes and the other
yeah,
convenience locations, there's no reason that they can't be
Yeah.
expanded to those already established kinds of businesses. It seems to be the logical thing to do to automate some of the things that we now spend a lot of time on.
yep. And that is something I can bring up to the state again when we have our next meetings.
Do we
Is it
have to
with
have their permission?
We kind of do. Yeah, because they're the ones that run it. Because when those machines go down,
Can't we just apologize after we do it?
I would be all right with that. I could do that. Yeah,
Yeah, why not Del Rapids, Brandon, Hartford?
Absolutely.
yeah.
Commissioner Gifford?
One follow-up on that. Has there been any talk with your counterpart in Lincoln County? Every once in a while you hear about Lincoln County wanting to set up some regionalization or something in South Sioux Falls for residents that are just south of 57th but don't want to go all the way to Canton. Is there any discussion of collaboration across Minnehaha, Lincoln, and something like that?
You know, when she first started, the Lincoln County Treasurer, we talked, and we just kind of got away from that, so that maybe that's something else we should probably revisit that, and it'd be kind of nice.
All righty. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Moving on, consider a motion to approve an interfund transfer from the Museum Store Fund to the Museum Special Enterprise Fund in the amount of $40,000. Bill Hoskins. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill Hoskins, Director of the Siouxland Heritage Museums. This would approve a interfund transfer between two revenue funds, the Museum Store Fund and the Museum Special Enterprise Fund, in the amount of $40,000. It is approved in the 2025 budget. The State Auditor's Office does require you to authorize that fund movement.
All right. Public comment on this agenda item. Commission, questions, action?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Consider a motion to authorize the museum to purchase a 2025 Chevy Express cargo van through Admin Minnesota procurement contract number 260206 in the amount of $37,731.40.
This would be an item to replace our current 2004 minivan with a new cargo van that would serve to move artifacts from the resource center to the Pettigrew or Old Courthouse for exhibit. It would be used for picking up materials and transporting the education staff out to programming.
Public comment on this agenda item. What are you doing with the 2005?
Well, we'll keep it until we actually get this van, and then we'll be coming to you
Surplus it?
to surplus it.
Okay. Commission
And
questions?
I don't know where that will go with its current condition.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Hey, good morning, Bill. And just to clarify for the public, these are internal funds that are simply being transferred internally, and the profits from the gift shop at the museum that are being used to purchase this new vehicle.
Right. The museum store fund is set up in such a way that it accounts for revenues and expenses associated with the operation of the store. But it is, we don't make a lot of money, but we do make money in the museum store. This would be transferring it from the store fund to the enterprise fund, where we can actually make expenditures out of it on non-store items.
Thank you.
Making motion, Commissioner?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consider an abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel 93643 for the 2024 property taxes in the amount of $1643.39. I don't see anybody from Equalization here. So, stuck on the elevator?
I'd recommend tabling these abatements. We're checking out to see where Director Lilla is, or a representative from Equalization.
Okay.
And it looks like Jacob just stepped out as well, so maybe table those two highway items and call me up and I'll give you the presentation on the MacArthur Foundation.
Okay, so we'll move to agenda item number 20, skip through 14 through 19, and move to 20.
You're
to
going to
23.
23.
Move to 23, okay. So we will go over a few agenda items and move over to item number 23, authorize the chair to sign an agreement between Minnehaha County and the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation for acceptance of the Safety and Justice Challenge Capstone Grant in the amount of $250,000 for the use over the period of January 1, 2025 through December 31, 2026. Good morning, Tom.
All right, good morning, Tom Greco, Commission Administrative Officer. So I'm happy to be before you today to present the agreement with the MacArthur Foundation for the final round of grant funding for the Safety and Justice Challenge. This one is in the amount of $250,000. This has been a long ongoing program that the county has entered into with the MacArthur Foundation. And ultimately, the goal of the funding is to safely reduce jail populations. It's really been a demonstration of some outstanding collaboration amongst not only county staff and departments, but also other entities such as the courts, other nonprofits, state organizations, et cetera. So I do ask for your approval on this. You will see me again within the next few weeks coming back before you, because with this $250,000 grant, we do have accompanying service agreements with 3 separate organizations: University of South Dakota's Center for Rural Health Initiatives, South Dakota Urban Indian Health, and Think 3D to operate the programs associated with this grant money. But again, I would encourage and request your approval of this agreement so that it can be signed.
Public comment on this agenda item. All right, commission questions, action? Commissioner Kipling.
One question. Tom, can you clarify for us? I think we had identified some of these projects in the last budget season, and we wanted to move forward with them regardless of whether this grant came through. So is getting this grant funding a cost savings within the budget, or how did we budget this mechanically?
Yes, in the amount of $21,000. So we had put aside some money for the Think 3D program. We will not need to use the general fund dollars for that, but instead there are funds through this. And as a matter of fact, the funds through this program will expand what Think 3D is able to do by 4 times. Commissioner
Bleinberg?
Just a thanks to the commission office, to Tom for his work on this, and all of the partners that are involved. It was, it took a little while to get here, and it involved a lot of work, and I'm just thankful that we're able to move forward with the last year of funding.
Yeah, my understanding, I think some of this money is used for the justice impacted, and our recidivism rate, from what I heard recently, has dropped from 70% down to 20% with the people that go through some of these programs that this money is used for. Am I correct in that?
I do not recall the exact number, but yes, that's what the in particular with Think 3D's program, their Bridges program is aimed at reducing recidivism.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. So, okay. Look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion is second. Call the roll, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Do we have anybody from, what's that?
Maybe go to the highway items.
Highway? Oh, here's Kyle. We'll move back now to item number 14. Consider an abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel 93643 for the 2024 property taxes in the amount of $1,643.39. Kyle, good morning.
Hi, Kyle Sexy, Deputy Director of Equalization. So this first parcel ID, like you said, 93643, recommending a denial. The taxpayer purchased the home 8/5 of 2020 and was issued 100% permanent toll disabled veteran on 3/1/24. Sorry, I just ran over here. They're requesting an abatement of $150,000 exemption for March, December of '24, taxes payable in '25. The issue with this one is the veteran was not the owner at that time, so we can't approve an abatement on something he didn't own. So we are recommending a denial.
Okay, public comment on this agenda item. Commission questions and/or action?
I'll make,
Go ahead.
I was just going to make the motion to approve the equalization office recommendation of denial.
Second that.
Motion second. So the applicant can apply because he wasn't paying those taxes,
Yeah.
but the next year, so he is eligible.
He'll
or
be
she.
eligible for the next year. Yep.
Okay. Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Kipley.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Lineberg.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider an abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel 88320 for the 2023 property tax year in the amount of $1141.86. Kyle.
Yep, so for this one, equalization is recommending a denial. The reason for this is taxes were prepaid in October of 2023 to move the mobile home onto the property. Requesting abatement for October and December of '23 and '24. So they already prepaid. There would be nothing to abate at that point. So they have to prepay the taxes in order to move. So we would recommend a denial just because they've already paid those up, but from what I'm reading, that's the reasoning Chris gave. So DOE recommends denial. Taxes were prepaid in October '23 to move the mobile home. Requesting abatement from October to December for '23, paid '24. So that's what Chris put as the notes.
Okay. Public comment. Commission questions? I think we're a little gray on this one here. So the 2023, 22 paid 2023, or paid and brought current, 2023 paid 24. So what we're debating are the 2023 tax year?
Taxes were prepaid October '23. From October to December. I believe just because they're not. I would have to get back on this one. I apologize. I haven't had a whole lot of time to really even look at these.
I don't know if you want me at the front podium or not. I would just add a little clarification that
If you would,
just
please.
a recollection that property taxes were always a year behind in South Dakota. That by law, before you can move a mobile home, you have to pay forward and make sure that you're current on those taxes. So those taxes were due and owing when that mobile home was seated where it was before it was moved out of state. So now that they're paying it, moved out of state, they're asking inappropriately for an abatement of taxes that they actually owed while the mobile home was still in South Dakota. It'd be my understanding of the memo.
Yeah.
Okay. Legal clarification? They're not asking for an abatement on something that isn't there because it was there for what they paid for.
Yes.
Okay,
Could I ask one follow-up question, Chair?
please.
The state's attorney, if that's okay. When the paperwork says that the state's attorney has recommended it legally sufficient, we're discussing the denial, not the abatement. Is that correct?
Right, denial.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to approve their recommended denial.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Kipley.
Aye.
Lineberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. For agenda items 16, 17, 18, and 19, Commissioner Kipley will be recusing himself. Consider an abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel number 53416 for the 2024 property taxes in the amount of $43.10.
Yep. So for this one, the city purchased these after November 1st. So just basically for that reason, they're requesting abatement for December of '24. Since the transfer happened after the assessment date, we have nothing to go back on. That would be something that would be handled likely at closing. So we would have nothing to abate back for them. We will update it for the future year. They will have a zero assessed value being exempt, but
Okay, public comment on this agenda item. My only question is, it seems like this should have been caught. Why would the city be even asking for this abatement?
they, basically on every purchase, they go through and they ask.
Okay,
So,
okay. Commission action.
I'll make a motion to approve the denial.
Second.
Motion is second, call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel 14045 for year 2024 property taxes, $98.10.
yep, and this one is basically the exact same scenario. They did not own the property for more than 16 days of the month. It was after November 1. There's nothing for us to abate.
Public comment. Commission action.
Make a motion to approve the denial.
Second.
Motion is second, call the roll.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. And these are kind of frustrating. The city's wasting staff time and, I mean, they should,
They just send them over.
can we send them a memo?
Yes, we will.
It's been very frustrating. Consider an abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel 96381 for the year 2024 property taxes, $219.22.
And once again, they purchased it December 20th. They did not own it for more than 16 days. Same scenario as the previous.
Public comment. Commission action.
I'll make a motion for the recommended denial.
Second.
Call the roll.
Heisey.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider an abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel 94149 for the year 2024 property taxes, $56.05.
Yep, the city purchased this December 19th. Again, they didn't own it long enough to request an abatement, but since they put in the application, we have to make a motion.
Public comment. Commission action.
Make a motion to approve the denial.
Second.
Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider bid results and award recommendation for project MC 2504 microsurfacing and crack seal, and authorize the chair to sign an agreement with Asphalt Surfacing Company, ASCO, for the base bid and alternate one. Jacob.
Morning, Commission. Jacob Mars, Minnehaha County Highway. We bid 3 projects on that date. This is one of those 3. The other 2 we'll see in a couple weeks, but this is for microsurfacing. We bid the base bid with 3 alternates as well. Looking at the different bids that we received, we also bid alternates on the other projects. And we are recommending only awarding the base bid plus alternate 1 on this one. And then we'll be awarding other alternates on the other projects, and that just keeps us in a line with our budget for the year. The bids came in good. ASCO and Asphalt, Aztec were both very close to each other. And the Missouri Petroleum, who we've worked with in the past, they were also a bidder this year. Our engineer's estimate was $2.28 million for the base bid and alternate 1, which was based off of last year's prices with 0 inflation. So prices have come down a little bit for microsurfacing, and I attribute that mostly to the price of oil. These plans, along with their other pavement maintenance plans, are put together in-house by Aaron and Jenna, and I think we got some good bids.
All right. Public comment on this agenda item. Commission, questions, action?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Lineberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider a motion to authorize chair to sign a joint powers agreement with the South Dakota Department of Transportation for the reconstruction of South Dakota Highway 11 and County Highway 130. Jacob.
This is a project the DOT is doing on State Highway 11. There are 2 bridges on that road that are currently posted, so a lot of the overweight loads are actually coming over county highways. In doing their design, they found the openings for those bridges were insufficient for the 100-year flood that they want to maintain clearance on Highway 11. So the intersection of Highway 130 and State Highway 11 is actually raising about 10 feet. And because of that, they have to go a considerable length east and west on our county highway in order to tie our road back into existing. So this agreement just allows them to do work within our right-of-way.
All right, public comment on this agenda item. Commission.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Additional comments?
Just a question. Do
Please.
we have any idea of the timeline of this project?
They're planning on 2026. I expect it'll probably be a 2-year project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Lineberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider a motion to authorize the chair to sign an agreement between Minnehaha County and JSA Inc. for construction administration of project MC 1710 Highway 149 2025 surfacing.
This project is probably the 30th time you guys have looked at. It's the county highway just south of Colton. We have bid our 3rd and final phase for construction of this project, which is awarded to Bituminous Paving Inc. earlier this year. They plan to start on that construction part after school releases this year. Therefore, we don't force a bunch of buses and kids on the gravel roads in the area. And we will maintain traffic under flaggers through this section of road for the summer. We have about a 10-week schedule for this project, and this contract with JSA provides for construction staking and some oversight in the project. But our full-time inspection, we're going to bring back Gavin Cook, who's been an intern for us in 2023 and 2024. First as a team member, he worked on the bridge and road crew. Last year did culvert inspections. This year he's going to do full-time inspection on this section of road in conjunction with this construction administration agreement with JSA.
Public comment on this agenda item. Commission.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item 24, consider a motion to change the time of the regular County Board of Commissioners meeting on February 25th, 2025 to 10 a.m. Morning.
All right,
Tom.
good morning again. Tom Greco, Commission Administrative Officer. So this is to change this meeting, the regular commission meeting, from 9 a.m. On next Tuesday to 10 a.m. The reason for this is that at 9 a.m., the board will be convening in a joint session with the Del Rapids City Council to consider some joint jurisdictional planning items. So there will be a meeting at 9 a.m. With Del Rapids. This meeting, the regular commission meeting, is moved to 10 a.m. It could start slightly later if the 9 a.m. meeting does go longer than anticipated. So again, this is just to provide notice to the public that this meeting time will be 10 a.m. next week.
Public comment. Commission. Need a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good morning, Meredith. We have our legislative update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Meredith Jerko with the Commission Office. So there is a lot going on in the legislature. 1 second here. Just gonna make sure I have my slides up. So today is Legislative Day 22. A couple of important dates to note are that next week, Monday, February 24th is the last day to move required delivery of bills or resolutions by a committee to the House of Origin. And then Tuesday, February 25th, so a week from now, that is the last day to pass bills or joint resolutions by the House of Origin. So that is crossover day. So any bills that started in the House and haven't made it over to the Senate or vice versa, just kind of die and will not be considered. They have to cross over into that second chamber. So the packet that is included is current as of noon on Friday, February 14th, which aside from any committees that have already started today, stayed current over the weekend because Friday was not a legislative day and the state legislature had yesterday off for the federal holiday. So there are some committees going on right now as I speak, so there will be some updates to the bills included after our meeting today. But a couple of things I just wanted to touch on. There has been some movement on election bills, specifically House Bill 1208 and Senate Bill 218. Those are two bills that look to categorize residents who use mail forwarding services and hit a certain number of criteria as national voters. So if either of those bills were to pass, that those national voters would only vote in elections for U.S. Senate, our Congress representative, and president and vice president. In addition, House Bill 1066 to revise residency requirements for the purpose of voter registration. That bill has seen a lot of back and forth. It's been in, I think, maybe two different committees now, and it, I think, was deferred to another day by the House a few different times, but that has finally passed out of the House 47 to 22. So it was amended. It used to have a option to challenge a voter's registration, so that part was dropped, and now it looks specifically at defining residence as an actual fixed permanent dwelling that an individual usually lives in and sleeps in. So that one will now move forward into the Senate. I don't believe it hasn't had its first reading in the Senate or been referred to a committee. So we'll be keeping an eye on that one. As well as you can see on the screen here, House Bill 1052, there's been a lot of different bills introduced in terms of with the issue of carbon dioxide pipelines, eminent domain, a lot of issues around that. House Bill 1052 is the only bill so far that has made it into the second chamber. It's been passed by the House and it's been referred to Senate State Affairs. So as I mentioned, crossover day is next week. There are still various carbon pipeline, eminent domain related bills. So we could see a lot of movement this week on those as they as legislators work to get their bills into the next chamber. But just a heads up that that's really the main one that has made it into the second chamber and then would, meet that crossover day deadline. There were a couple of bills last week that weren't necessarily in the county's favor that were killed. House Bill 1226, that would limit what roads a county could transfer to a municipality if they were to annex an area. That one is no longer, that was tabled by House Transportation. There was a bill that would prohibit political subdivisions from imposing firearm restrictions. That was also deferred to the 41st legislative day, and then House Bill 1219, it would require counties and municipalities to provide emergency medical services within their jurisdictions. There was a similar bill that was deferred to the 41st day. And this one was introduced before the deadline. That was deferred to the 41st day as well, just because of the financial burden that would place on especially smaller counties. And then kind of the the bill that I'm sure that you are all interested to hear about, Senate Bill 216. That was originally a hog house bill, and I'll actually stop myself. I won't get ahead of myself. There are about 20 hog house bills still floating around Those are bills that are introduced, as you'll see here in this graph, or in the chart with the bills with asterisks. So those are bills, Senate Bill 147, promote and enhance the greatness of South Dakota. That is all that it says in the bill. There's no other meat to it. So then these are defined by LRC as hog house, so that those bills can then be amended in committee after the introduction date of a bill. So there are about 20 hog house bills floating around. Only 2 have been amended to actually lay out some more policy and what that would look like. One of them is that Senate Bill 198 has been amended, but the one that's kind of top of mind for everyone is Senate Bill 216, reduce the growth in the assessed value of owner-occupied property tax assessments. So this was amended. The amendment was published on Thursday of last week. This is the governor's property tax proposal. This is a really complex bill. We are still looking into all of the different impacts it would have on us as a county, on how it would shift property tax for whether it be owner-occupied, commercial, agriculture, how some of these things would move around. But the big things to note about the bill are that it's being introduced for taxes payable for 2027 through 2031. So in theory, one of the things that we would want to look at is what's going to happen if it isn't amended before 2032 to remove those dates, if in 2032 all of these provisions would go away. But it caps the total assessed value of all property in a county with an owner-occupied single-family dwelling, that it cannot increase more than 3% over the total assessed value of all property in the county. So that is one of the big constraints there, the 3% limit on county-specific assessments for single-family homes. In addition, for all of the individual taxing districts and school capital aid budgets, those are capped at a 2% increase for capital growth or construction. Improvements and additions to existing owner-occupied single-family dwellings that increase the value by 40% or less would not be considered as county growth. So having that cap at a 2% for growth, as well as single-family dwellings, if someone's to add an addition that is less than 40%, that's not counted as growth. So when we're looking at how that impacts the county, we are hoping that once this bill is scheduled for a committee hearing, it's been referred to a committee, it has not been scheduled for a hearing, that we will maybe get some more clarity on if there has been a fiscal note or some projections of, how that could potentially impact counties. And then the other big change that this would have to property taxes is there are updates for the tax freeze program for the elderly and disabled. So this would raise the maximum income from $35,000 to $55,000 for single member homes and $45,000 to $65,000 for multi-member homes. It increases the maximum eligible home value from $350,000 to $500,000, and those income maximums and the home value maximums, those would increase starting January 1st, 2026. Those would increase annually by the index factor. So each year we would see that number climb up a little bit. And in addition, in the current wording for the property tax freeze says property owner. And this would change it to owner of an owner-occupied single-family dwelling, and it increases their residency requirement from 1 year to 5 years. So with the updates to the tax freeze programs, as Commissioner Kipley mentioned during Treasurer Swanson's presentation, it would just be kind of changing numbers, but we are unsure at this point of how many additional citizens would be able to apply for this property freeze. So taking into account how much extra staffing hour that looks like for our treasurer's office as they're processing those applications. Also, if that residency requirement changes from 1 year to 5 years, making sure that we have a good process set up to double check and verify that residency, that they have lived here for 5 years. As I said, at this time, the bill's been referred to Senate State Affairs. It's not yet been scheduled for a hearing. Senate State Affairs, I believe, off the top of my head, meets Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Their agenda's already out for Wednesday. Maybe they'll amend it. Maybe they'll get it on the agenda for Friday. But if this is to make it into the House before crossover day, it'll be a lot happening in a short amount of time. So that is all I have. I'm sure there will be some questions, but I'll stand by.
Public comment. Meredith, is a fiscal note required with Senate Bill 216? Do you know?
I'm not sure if it's been required, or if it is required. I have noticed a lot of the property tax bills ahead of this bill have been, instead of being voted on in committee, they have been being referred to appropriations or deferred to get more information about the financial impact. So,
Okay.
Yeah, Mr.
Other
Chair,
questions, comments?
I guess
Commissioner
just
Kipley?
mostly a comment, but I guess I would just express quite a bit of skepticism on a cap on growth, our growth factor leading to the base of our property taxes. That would have a major effect on the county, and especially a fast-growing county like Minnehaha County, and that compounds over time. So we would be sitting here each year having to pretty much have to bake in a opt-out to make up that, and in a compounding factor each year. So that one I'm very skeptical of. I also don't really like messing with the formulas around assessed values other than just the market appraisal. I've sat here 2 straight Aprils as the Board of Equalization hearing appeals on things, and that's a complex process enough. And now if we're not letting the market dictate what a proper valuation is, but putting on some artificial 3% cap, I think these price controls and caps don't have a great history in economics. And I think they'll create a lot of weird incentives. From what I gather, I think there's a sentiment to cost shift away from owner occupied and then therefore on to ag and commercial. And I think there's other mechanisms that will be easier to get that net result, and I think that are more transparent. I'm guessing a lot of legislators hear complaints, as we do, about increases in assessed values, but assessed values are not your taxes. And the simple algebra of it is we could make everyone feel great by cutting their assessed values in half, but then the levy rate would double and we get the same amount of taxes. So if people care that much about their assessed values, I guess we can spend all our time debating that. If they care about their property taxes, which I think is what they actually care about, I think we have to look at some other mechanisms. So all of that by way of saying, I think we have to bring our expertise to bear here in Minnehaha County. So our equalization office and our auditor's office, we need to game out some scenarios of what would, an average $300,000 home, what's the net effect of that? We look at that chart every year in our budget for what the net effect of taxes would be, and if the levy rate's going to be something different for owner-occupied versus what it's going to be for ag and commercial, or if they're just going to cap assessed values in some arbitrary way. I think we have to have some understanding of that and bring some information to bear to legislators that might be brand new and not know how this works, frankly. But yeah, I think this has some power behind it being a governor's bill, so I tend to think something is going to happen here, but we need to work with our county association and with our equalization office to make sure they have the best information to make the mechanics of this bill as straightforward as possible. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I have just a quick comment and also a question, Meredith. I think Commissioner Kipley made a lot of good points there. I did want to note something dear to my heart is property tax freezes for the elderly. And part of the governor's bill, Senate Bill 216, if passed as is, and it may be amended down the road, it would bump up the income levels and also the house valuations that are applicable for a tax freeze for the elderly. So I am interested in this bill. I'll be following it, and thank you so much, Meredith, for your regular updates. I did want to ask. I wish I could spend more time following all the legislation in Pierre. There was a bill brought by Senator Sue Peterson that would totally freeze property taxes for, I believe, 2 or 3 years. Did that bill get killed in committee, or is that still active? And you'll have to forgive me, I don't remember the bill number on that.
Yes, I know that is a bill that we were tracking, and I know it's on my list. If you'll just give me.
I think it's Senate Bill 207.
Yes, thank you. So yes, the last update on that was Senate taxation deferred that to another day. So it still can be brought back before the committee. It's deferred to the 41st, kills the bill, deferred to another day as they just want to visit on another day. And that was because, if I remember correctly, I sit through a lot of committee hearings. I believe that bill was heard either the day that the governor's proposal was coming out or the day before. And so since there was, word of mouth around that the governor's proposal was coming out, a lot of the property tax bills last week were just kind of deferred to another day, just to kind of see what Senate Bill 216 would be and what would be in that proposal. So if I'm remembering correctly, yeah, that was either the day that the governor's bill came out or the day before. So that Senate taxation can still bring it up and hear it. I'm interested to see how all of the other property tax bills proceed forward now with Senate Bill 216. I don't know if, especially with crossover day coming up, I don't know how many will get out of their chamber of origin. But yeah, so that one has conversation and discussion on it was actually very short too as well, because they just were waiting to see what came out.
Yeah, and there's certainly a whole host of different property tax related bills, and there's a strong desire statewide to really get a handle on this and provide some property tax relief for the citizens of the state. And I'll be looking with rapt attention as these develop, and hopefully something can come forward as a fix. So, thank you.
I guess my only comment would be if the governor called me, and he hasn't, and asked me for my input on some of these bills, specifically 216. And we've been talking for years. We've always got this hard line. If your income is here, you're okay, and if it's $1 over, you magically are able to pay all your bills now. I mean, a stepped-in basis, whether it be the elderly tax freeze or just any of these things, to have an incremental approach to, okay, well, your income now went over this dollar amount, so you can pay a little bit more. You don't have to pay all of it. I mean, we've seen examples on this commission where individuals' income went up $100 and they had to pay $1,500 in taxes just because they went over that line. And it just seems to make sense that there'd be a stepped-in or basis or some way of incrementally applying some of those freezes or assessment freezes. So that'd be my only suggestion if the governor's listening. Anything else, Commissioner Bleinberg?
Thank you. Along those same lines, if I could wave a magic wand, I would love to see the elderly tax freeze property value be based more on the increases in that specific area as opposed to statewide. I think there's such a disparity in property values and increases specifically with the amount of growth we have in Minnehaha County. Our residents, and we hear it in April, their values are so high, they aren't able to qualify. And I think even if you were to leave the elderly tax freeze at the current, I think it's 345,
350. Yep.
350, I think in a geographically in the majority of the state, you could probably have a very nice home in that price range. And the citizens in Minnehaha County, in the rural areas, their properties have just skyrocketed beyond that point. It's very difficult to find an acreage outside of city limits that would be eligible. So I'm sympathetic for our elderly residents.
All right. Commissioner Benega?
The thing that I'm a little confused on with all the property tax bills is that those affect the county's budget significantly with the reduction of property tax, which is our major revenue source. But originally, some of the conversations that were brought out to peer, specifically the one that the lieutenant governor put together, was, excuse me, offsetting some of that loss of revenue with sales tax revenue. And all I've seen in most of these bills is just addressing the property tax issue. What happened to some of the conversation, if anything, with that whole conversation about sales tax?
Yeah, so House Bill 1019, that was the original bill. It sat for a long time with no movement. It does have a hearing tomorrow in House State Affairs. I have been reading the news and a couple of different things from different outlets that many believe it was a good starting point, a way to start conversation. It was a little, when it came out, it shocked some people. A lot of people had questions. So in their opinion, it was a good way to start conversation. So when those news reports were coming out, I thought maybe it was just going to be tabled and not move forward. However, it now has a hearing scheduled. So obviously, if both Senate Bill 216 and House Bill 1019 passed, that would be a lot going on with property taxes. So I will be listening in tomorrow to that hearing to kind of see what comes of that. But as of late, what I've heard is that it was a good conversation starter, but there hasn't been a lot of movement. So
It's in limbo.
it's a lot, and there are still some, as I mentioned before, there are other property tax bills that are still floating around out there that if Senate Bill 216 doesn't move forward or is amended, we may see other ones come through as well. So a lot of moving parts.
As the County Association of County Governments, have they made their stance known on any number of these bills, or things are moving pretty quickly? And
they do send out the weekly update email where they either thumbs up a bill or thumbs down, or they just monitor. I haven't heard much about 216. There is a weekly call that I'll be joining tomorrow, and I'm sure I will get some more insight from those folks that are boots on the ground in Pierre every day. So
I'm with Commissioner Benega. I think his point is, if you're going to tell us we don't get any revenue, tell us what we don't have to spend the money on too. So we no longer have to pay for this or that. All right. Thank you, Meredith.
thank you.
Public comment, any non-agenda item, we take public comment. Speaker has 5 minutes. Anybody want to address the commission? All right, commission liaison reports. Anybody been working overtime? Commissioner Benega?
Well, I think I have 8 meetings this week, so I'm not sure that's overtime, but the whole issue of, frankly, some programming issues with the Journey of Hope, so to speak, that Commissioner, what's your name again?
Commissioner Bleinberg.
Bleinberg, I'm sorry. I'm giving you a bad time. Been together multiple times. And helping with some of the programming needs of the Juvenile Justice Center is extremely important. And And frankly, we became educated about the use of art classes, which I thought was impressive. Yesterday, we spent 5 hours interviewing highway director candidates, so we'll be moving ahead with that shortly. We also have a couple of meetings with a public defender's office, the public advocate's office, that are talking about some of the things that they're being challenged with. So we'll hear more about those in the next few weeks, I'm assuming. Other than that, haven't had anything to do. Oh, I do have a fair board meeting tomorrow too.
Mr. Chair, I'll just expand on, Gerald and I were able to meet with Julie from the Public Advocate's Office, and just we're watching the rollout of the new statewide indigent legal defense group, and as they staff up and start taking appellate cases, just seeing how the mechanics of that are working and how we would hand off what cases we would usually take the appeals at the county level, and seeing that those cases go to this new statewide office. So we're working through the kinks on some of that, and so I think Dean and Cole are the liaisons to the defender's office, and we've got the advocate's office, so appeals get generated out of both offices, so we'll want to just stay coordinated on those as they start to go to the statewide office.
Commissioner Bleinberg.
Thank you. I just wanted to make note of the fact that I am so thankful this year for the new liaison assignments that I've been given. Just another opportunity to continue learning more about what the commission and the county is involved in, and also just to learn from experience. We're always happy to have new commissioners, and change is good, but I definitely am feeling the loss of Commissioner Bender also with the experience that she had on the board. So I've taken over the AHAB, which meets monthly to discuss housing issues, affordable housing, and just the collaboration that's taking place between nonprofits, local housing authorities, and the city and the county has been very impressive. And I also get the opportunity to meet every other week with the Juvenile Justice Center building project group and learn from Commissioner Benninga, and the work that's been done there is continuing. And then, as he mentioned, also we did get to meet with the Journey of Hope and learn a lot about the different programs that they provide for citizens, not just in JDC, but also throughout the county. And then I also had the opportunity to spend time at the Bishop Dudley House and Union Gospel Mission this past week, learning about the way that they serve the population in need in our county. So lots of moving parts, lots of things to look forward to.
Mr. Chair, I can attest, Commissioner Bleinberg, you're missed on several of the boards that I replaced you on. So, and as the new commissioner on the block, I've been making the rounds as much as I can, trying to meet with the various boards that I've been assigned to, and get up to speed with what they do and who their staff are, and where their interests lie. I got in contact with the Board of Abandoned Cemeteries. They'll be meeting for the first time in April. Date to be set yet, to be decided. But they are also looking at taking a little tour around the various sites in the county in May or June. So I look forward to attending that, and I think you'll all be very relieved that there have not been any ghost sightings at the abandoned cemeteries. So I also met with the Conservation District. They had a board meeting a couple weeks ago. That went fairly smoothly. I also met with Mr. Parker with the Conservation District. We took a tour of their vehicles, machinery, and some of their buildings, and where they meet. So I'm looking forward to get more involved with that organization. There's a little bit of trepidation with some of their grants, given the change in administration. I get the sense, though, it'll all work out over the course of the year. I also met with a representative from the Interlakes Community Action Partnership, and I'll be attending their board meeting down the road as well. So great to meet get around and meet many of these folks and get to know these organizations.
Last week, Commissioner Bleinberg and I met with the funeral director. Actually, a few of them. I told people I was meeting with funeral directors, and they're like, what's going on? But not personal, county business. Most people aren't aware that, you know, and maybe even newer commissioner, we spend almost $250,000 a year for funerals in Minnehaha County, taxpayer dollars, because somebody died, and actually this happens nearly 3 times a week, about 150 times a year. Somebody is deceased, and there's no family that is willing to take care of burial and funeral and that type of thing, and the family comes to the county and says, we can't afford to take care of this. Well, the funeral directors have had a contract with us for several years. We're going to be renegotiating what we pay. We pay anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500 per funeral. Not advertising that so that people come to us for more business, but it is expensive, and the funeral homes have been very good about working with us and being partners, but we're going to have to be taking a look at that in our budget cycle and what we're going to be able to do going forward. You know, I talked previously about, you know, everybody's looking at our revenues and, you know, adjust our expenses. Come to find out that Minnesota and Iowa the state does not require the county to pay for funerals. South Dakota requires the counties to pay for funerals. Might be an idea there. And yet in Minnesota and Iowa, they don't have bodies stacked up on the side of the road. They're able to get everything taken care of without the county having to pay for it. So, just putting that out there, I guess. Tomorrow is Sioux Metro Growth Alliance membership meeting in Harrisburg, and in March we'll have the annual meeting for Sioux Metro Growth. So that's what I have going on. Moving on to non-action commission discussion. All right, nothing there. We're going to have executive session, so I'm going to look for a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of South Dakota Codified Law 125-2, 134, and 6.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So we'll be in the next room here in about 10 minutes for executive session.